All right, ready? Each of you is leading work that is challenging traditional thinking. What was the moment that made you realize we needed to take a different approach to crime and violence prevention?
Come on, do your rant from LinkedIn.
Which one?
Right. Right.
I think for me it was that the moment that I realized that there was no people with lived experience in these spaces actually doing any of the work. It was more a prescriptive measure. And so when I speak sometimes I'll say, like, if you get in the car and you buckle your seatbelt, you're probably not the best person to talk about violent crime, right? Because you are safety conscious. And so
That's good.
it is one thing to have academics or scholarly knowledge. It's another thing to have like real relevant experience. And so we have this habit of taking people who have a bunch of degrees or who have, published papers or been a scholarly person, and they come up with these prescriptive measures to give to people, but they have no actual lived experience. If you wanted to know why somebody committed a crime, ask people who commit crimes, right? Just like if there's something wrong with your car, if there's a rattling noise, you're gonna ask a mechanic, you're not gonna go ask a dentist. And so I noticed that throughout, the time that I've been in this space, that those who we would call subject matter experts in any other industry are the people who are overlooked and not utilized in this particular space.
That's good. That's good. Post incarceration for me, understanding the power of what cognitive behavior modification does, and then coming home and seeing that the only people that were delivering this modality that I felt like changed me at a very high degree was only being taught by people that were with the justice system. And I felt like for it to be relevant, it had to come from somebody that had that lived experience. So I think me coming home from prison and then me also being a CEO is completely different than most CVI modalities, because most CVI organizations are ran by people that haven't been, but they employ, credible messengers, and they understand the value of them. But how much different would it be if the organizational culture or the construct was designed in cultural competency also? So seeing that there was a gap in that area elevated me into some rooms that gave me, some opportunities to become a thought leader. And that opportunity kind of like carved out, what Lyrics is today.
So we talk a lot about innovation. The context of this conversation, I wanted to talk about innovation. I want to kind of set the stage for what I mean by that. And I think Kyle's heard me talk about this a lot. I'm very clear about the difference between invention and innovation. Invention is new. Innovation is actually taking old things and putting them to new uses, right?
That's good.
So when you think about innovation in your domain right now and how innovation can impact this issue and this real world on the ground experience, how do you think about that in the work that you do? Like, how do you think about how innovation can possibly impact what we're trying to achieve here?
Really, it's kind of the philosophy of what you do here with the ecosystem building. I don't think that nonprofit really thinks ecosystem as much as they think solve the problem, right? The ecosystem building is not, I want to put multiple organizations into one building. I want to put the right organizations that streamline into each other. That way we create a formula or a opportunity for a person to go from one thing to the next with purpose. And that's something that I feel like is desperately needed in the non-for-profit space, is the ecosystem building component, right? I know a lot of people often say that non-for-profit is just a tax code, but it's also a culture, right? Like, it's a culture of people that love, that care. That doesn't mean that they're business owners, right? People that love and care. I'm just thinking about the Plex Pod in 39th and Park. It's a totally different feel from Plex Pod in 39th and Park. And I'm not saying one culture is different or better than the other, but I'm saying that they're completely different. And because of that, I think where the innovation happens at is when we closely merge those two together and take away some of the not-for-profit ideology and take away some of the business ideology and then create something. A lot of times when we think innovation is, I'm just gonna take my organization and this organization, I'm gonna put it together. But that's adjacent, that's an environment, that's not an ecosystem, you know what I mean? Ecosystems flourish together, they evolve, they grow, they manipulate, and they become something else. Innovation is truly about two things becoming a completely different thing. And that's what needs to be infused into the nonprofit space as far as public safety and violence prevention. That's my opinion.
No, that's good. I mean, I did get an A- in intervention in college. But like innovative, like what we're doing at municipal court with the right community partners to elevate, to solve the problem in a holistic manner is innovative because people aren't doing that, right? Like we talk about what community is and what it looks like to have this collaboration, but it's really all talk and not much action nor collaboration. And then secondly, so I was the program manager at UMKC School of Law when we ran the expungement clinic, and actually using innovation like large language models to help with like expungement. And so we've developed pieces of technology for people who go through the expungement process to be able to do a pro se expungement, which means they can go home and do it themselves, or they can utilize AI to even see if they're eligible. I'm actually working with someone right now to build one for reentry, and they're working on an AI generated model for reentry, because Kyle is right. Like when you start telling people like, hey, I don't do that, go over there. We don't do that. You have to go, you lose people, right? And so it would be great to either have something like we have at municipal court, and for for people who are not participating in that, to be able to go home and put in your situation, and then be able to, if you got a microphone and some speakers, be able to talk to the AI specifically built for your particular problems. And so we have to provide innovative solutions in this time frame, because we do get stuck doing the same old thing over. Yes, my rant on LinkedIn. We do the same things over and over and somehow expect a different result. So we have to come in and be innovators in the space. We have to come in and be disruptors, much like Netflix was a disruptor, or much like Lyft or Amazon was a disruptor in their spaces. We have to come in and be innovative and be disruptors in this space. We all know mass incarceration doesn't work. There's no direct correlation between mass incarceration and crime, right? And so we have to be innovative in our solutions, specifically now, to say, hey, let's utilize technology to help people. Let's really build coalitions of like-minded people who actually work together to solve these particular problems. And that may not sound new. Like someone could be listening and say, well, Kyle, like, don't we do that? No, we don't. We really don't. So we have to continue to be innovative in our space. And it probably means a little bit more to me and Kyle because we come from an environment in which often people are talking about, but we're not at the table.
Right. So like I hear a lot of times people say that what we do, there's a thin line between the work that we do and then what's best practice, right? There's a thin line. I mean, but the Grand Canyon looks like a thin line from space. You know what I mean?
Right.
But once you get up on it and you understand it with vitality, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, this is a chasm. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, this isn't the same. And I think the work that we do, we're bringing light, or we're bringing the 30,000 foot view straight down to like eye level. You know what I mean? Like, oh, these best practices are best practice for this culture, not this culture. You know what I mean? And it takes people to be able to become articulate from the trauma to be able to articulate the trauma to those that can make the policies and procedures though, right? So people look at me and you and they'll be like, oh, look, they made it out, but they don't understand we're anomalies to the masses of what the problem is though, right? So I think the innovation that we bring to this is not only the work that we do and how we strategize the work, but our courageousness to push against the hard line and push against the norms that have been put in place for years and years and years and still be able to stand without being burnt out because of people's public opinion. You know what I mean? Courageous, there's no way to be innovative without courageous conversation or courageous heart, courageous thought process, courageous mentality. Like, you won't innovate because everybody's going to tell you that you're wrong or you're stupid or you don't get it, because that's the heartbeat of what innovation is though. You know what I mean? It's going to be different. And I love what Kramer said, you know, he says change has got to be hard because it's new. Anything new has to create fear, you know what I mean? And if you're not fearful about the thing that you're going to create, then it may not be innovation, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I always tell people the greatest disruptors in history at one point were all called crazy.
Yeah,
exactly.
They were all called crazy or told it wasn't going to work or that's not how it's going to happen.
Right. When you say the world is round, oh my
He was a
God.
witch. He was a witch.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
a witch.
Like you'll die for
innovation.
for innovation, and that's one of the things that, you know, for us in particular, who again have been through these experiences, it's really having these courageous conversations, sometimes being able to stand alone in a room and say these things because, you know, they're absolutely correct. And you have to push against the norm for people to understand that. And it's very unfortunate because it makes it very difficult to get funding. It makes it very difficult to build relationships. It makes it very difficult to help the people that need it the most. We always talk about the 1%, and then 1%, normal America understands that as we're talking about the 1% of the wealth, but there's the 1% of the people who are out here who people are talking about who are never in the room, and yet these are the people that we continually focus on. And so it becomes one of these things to where we have to be courageous in what it is that we're doing. We have to have the intestinal fortitude to stand up in the face of adversity. We have to enter in these spaces where people will say, well, you're this and you're that, and you don't have the education and that, and be able to push forward. Even that in itself is innovative because normally people shy away from that. Normally people don't want to. I talk to guys all the time and they say, Johnny, I can't do what you do. And I'm like, I'm doing this for you. This is why I do this, because if we don't have a voice, if we can't speak for our population, then who's going to speak for us?
So let me ask you about that, because I mean, how do you engage individuals in the co-creation of of the solutions and the answers versus them feeling like they're recipients of a program, right? They're like it's happening to them or they're being talked about versus co-creating alongside you, you know, and the importance of lived experience, right? That importance of truly understanding the problem. How do you engage individuals to feel like they're empowered or that they have the opportunity to be a part of the answer at this point?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Kyle answer first because he do it every day.
So are we talking about the participants or the businesses that I partner with?
Oh, I think those that are, I think of it more broadly as those impacted or those, those impacted by the issues, you know, whether it be crime, violence, you know, whatever those things are. How do you engage those individuals to feel like they're part of the answer and part of the co-creation opportunity? So I think that's a challenge, right? So Johnny's talking about like that's where we need more engagement and we need those people in the room. Is it voices like yours, or is there an opportunity to bring more of those voices in, and how do you do that in a way that's meaningful?
For me, the reason I'm hesitant to answer is because there's so many different buckets of people that I have to engage, so I have to engage everybody different, right? Like my political space is different than my community partner space and my organizational space or my grassroots organizational space or my student space or even my staff space. Like everybody's a collaborator in my space because that's just my style of leadership, though, right? So I'm just gonna pick two for the sake of for the conversation, and one is gonna and then my donor space or
Sure.
my like
It's very different.
they're so different. So I'm just gonna speak to my partner space because I have a partner in the room. What I've learned in this, as far as innovation is, I don't need to do what my partners are doing. I don't need to hire somebody and then they come in, they do a great job for me, and then I'm gonna steal all of their best practices and I'm gonna create their best practices because financially it's easier to manage when it's in-house though, right? So honestly, what I feel like is, because before I partner with a conglomerate, I'm a partner with a grassroots organization or a grassroots person that has the heart to do it. And what happens is majority of people are all passion, majority of people in nonprofit, they're more passion than paperwork, and they really just want to serve, right? So in my innovative thought process is, then just serve. And then what I'll do is, I'll figure out where these grants are gonna come from. Let's talk about pre and post tests, or let's use my credentials and my notoriety and the things that I have, please use it. Like, go get grants with it, go do those things with it, and we're gonna do the paperwork, we're gonna be the fiscal sponsor, we're gonna do all of that, because I just want you to focus on the passion part of it. And then what you won't know is, I'm setting this up, I'm talking about you in these rooms, positioning you to be able to be the next WeCode or the next whatever, right? So you say, how do we collaborate? I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is just me as a leader and what I've learned in this, everybody's not gonna understand where you're taking them, so sometimes you might not have to tell them why you're taking them there though, right? I think my job as a CEO and a community leader is to make sure that people are walking away with their deliverables and a paycheck. If I can get them to walk away with that deliverable and that paycheck, it is my responsibility. It's not my partner's responsibility for me to utilize the data and the assets from what they did. That's my responsibility. I'm not gonna ask you to do that. So because I'm moving like that, I don't have to sit in a room and give my strategic plan away to a partner. I don't have to do all of that. I just need to figure out where we fit in this area and maximize that the best as possible. I don't believe in having 100 roundtable discussions to keep talking about what we should do. In my mind, I don't even feel like I should be asking people that don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? I believe I should take input, get data, get quality information, but in the end, if I'm gonna say I'm a leader, I'm gonna have to reason that information and make the decision. And I feel like sometimes leaders are so people-pleasing that they're too scared to say, this is what you should do, and deal with the pushback from it. Because what happens is—
Those aren't leaders, man. Let's just be clear, those aren't leaders.
But I know, but just because people have LLCs, they think they're leaders and bosses.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I'm
fact.
saying? And that doesn't qualify you as a leader or a boss. It just says you have a tax status. So I honestly feel that at some point we have to make decisions for people and fall on the sword if it's good and walk with the reef if it's great. You know what I'm saying? But either way it goes, you have to make a decision, and that's what real leaders and innovators do. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and so I'll speak to, because it was my experience, and and I'll share this story. Like when I first went to college and the university was doing something, I went to Rockhurst University way too many times, and I'm going back. And so someone had to remind me that students have power. And so I go out and I'm just gonna focus on the guys that I see and work with who tell me, like, it doesn't matter, I can't do what you do, and they have this, and it's almost like a hopeless mentality. And so I try to say that you are valuable. Your opinion is valuable. And Cal used something earlier of this idea that we are anomalies, and that is true, although I try to reinforce the fact that if you do some things, you can be just like us, right? It doesn't have to be, and if we can create an army of Johnnies and Cals and other people out here, like, we can really shift the landscape. And so I really try to make people feel comfortable as possible, because I think even when we talk about things like voter engagement, I really think people believe that it just doesn't matter. Like, and if you have a criminal conviction, let's just be honest, if you're black and have a criminal conviction and you out here, you really feel like you don't matter. Like the world has shut you out. And so we have to instill hope in these individuals to say, no, you do matter. You are a person. Somebody loves you, whether that's your mom or your kids or whoever that is, and your voice matters. And you have to be vulnerable, and you have to show people love. Like you can't, people, the world is a tough place, right? And once you get these stigmas, or people want to call them scarlet letters or whatever that looks like, it becomes very difficult for you to feel like you really matter in the grand scheme of things. And so we have to show people like you matter. Your family matters, your kids matter, your opinion matters, what you think matters, how you feel matters. And we just so happen to have a platform to where we can convey those messages out to a broader audience, because they're not able to sit in these meetings or be able to put input into some of these plans. Because I think what you said was earlier is correct. We are very prescriptive. We'll say, hey, this is what you need. And you could need a grocery store, and somebody will tell you need a gas station. And you sitting there like, wait a minute, we don't need a gas station. Gas stations down. Yeah, and we continue to do that over and over. And so we have to be very cognizant of, me and Kyle's role. We have to be cognizant because we're in positions that other people, like some of my partners, will never be in these roles, just to be honest. They're just never gonna they're never gonna run organizations. They're never gonna, but we understand their pain because we talk to them. Like, you're my friend, I talk to you, and they're able to convey in this sense of vulnerability what it is that they're going through. And I think it's incumbent upon us to take that information, like Kyle said, you take this information, and then we have to make decisions depending on what kind of leadership we are, whether that's servant leadership or whatever that leadership look like. And then we go into these rooms and we convey the messages from the people who have these particular experiences.
I think this is how innovation happens, though, because the dichotomy between what he's saying and what I'm saying is your voice matters. Everybody's opinion matters in the room. I think that's very, very true, right? But I think where the dichotomy happens between what me and him are saying, and this is why me and him work so well together, because we're very passionate about the work that we do, but there's a thin line, you know what I'm saying, that splits what we believe. And as my brother says, every opinion matters. I feel like only reason our opinion matters is because we put legs to our opinion, right? We built our opinion. Me and you sit here because we decided to do something different than just say our opinion. You know what I'm saying? And because we chose to do something than just say our opinion, now we get to speak for the people that just tell us what their opinions are, right? And opinions aren't always given in solutions. Opinions are people complaining about a problem. You know what I mean? And where the anomaly piece comes in, that for me, and I don't want to, when I say anomaly, I said this one time when I was at a federal conference, and the guy pulled me to the side. He was like, I think that's pretty cool that you goated yourself. I'm not goading anything. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I'm the greatest at anything. What I'm saying is I have an ability to reason. And every attribute or gift that I have in the public safety or violence prevention space means that I'm a greater servant. You know what I mean? The better I am at something, or the higher that me and Johnny get in position, is because we serve more. We sacrifice more. We're willing to give up more. We're willing to go places where people aren't ready to go. And that's what gives us our opinion. That's what gives our opinion validity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my dad used to say every problem's worth a dime, every answer's worth $1. You know, like it's easy to have the opinion, but you guys are doing the work. You guys are doing the legwork to come up with the answers.
And that's why Johnny Waller doesn't have a title. His title is Johnny Waller.
His title is Johnny Waller.
Oh my God.
He put the work in.
I did. Yeah, I put the word together.
We had to get that on tape somehow.
No, it's all good.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah, yeah.
good.
So, Kyle, you said the word grassroots a minute ago. I want to dive into that one because part of what you see as a disconnect here, part of what I guess I feel as an outsider to this in many ways is there's this disconnect between grassroots efforts and individuals and organizations that are close to the ground, close to the issues, close to the and the institutional systems that need to change or that might be most impacting the situation. What are you guys doing to bridge that gap? I mean, I hear some people use phrases like, you have to be code switching. You have to be able to do this in a room and do this in a room and do this in a room and some of those types of things. How do you guys tackle or think about this issue, this disconnect, right, between the ground and the system?
I think you named it. You called it the code switch. I think the biggest issue that grassroots organizations are having is that we're not code switching the data. We're not. So everything that I do, let's be very clear. Before 1 + 1 = 2 and made you a genius, if you knew how to start a fire and kill an animal, you were the man. You know what I'm saying? Like you were that guy. You know what I'm saying? So if we break down the educational construct from it and just say, is this civilization able to raise their own people? Like, were we doing that before there was a typewriter? Were we doing that before it was AI? Were we doing that before Google? And if that is true, then that means that there's solutions that are there. So the fact is, we're using these solutions, we're not using the terminology that best practices use. So what we ended up having to do with my organization was I partnered with UMKC, the nonviolence, the data team for the 30 million that came down the line. And when they came in, they wanted, the big fear that a lot of the organizations were fearing was that they were going to be scrutinized and judged, and they were going to have these people, these overseers that were going to just be over their shoulders looking at what they're doing. I didn't go into it with that mentality. I went into it with, you need to make your data match what I'm saying works. And that's how we're going to create this narrative moving forward. So what Dr. Amaya did was she took the best practices and then allowed me to look at what they consider best practices and change the language to fit my pre and post test. And now my pre and post test tells the story that I needed to tell, and she code switches it to make it best practice, the language of best practice. You know what I'm saying? And now we have this new data set that's saying that lyrics is really performative, right? Not because I'm changing the way that the data needs to be, the power of the data is in the person that writes the data, but I'm not the one writing it, right? I'm using what the federal standards say is best practice under resiliency. I'm using best practice under case management supports and stuff like that. But, and to give you an example, so I got two guys. So in my program, they're coming in with their guns, right? Backpacks. If they got backpacks and their sweatpants are hanging low, they're active, right? They got guns. So if I have two people that when they started the program, whenever they had issues, they will argue, but they will put their hands in their what's the names, or they put their hoods on, or their clothes off, or they'll use rhetoric like, "Oh, my dead homie," they'll use this rhetoric. But then 3 months into the program, they're having a heated argument, but they're still in their chair and they're still doing those things. You know what I'm saying? That's social and emotional intelligence. Now I have an awareness that, yeah, I'm upset, but I can have that same angry conversation, but I can have it in a relaxed way because I'm not allowing my emotion to dictate my action. You know what I'm saying? That's a data point. So how do we prove that when nobody cares about me? Like he didn't put his hood on. Ooh, great. You know what I mean? Check. You know what I mean? And I say this, and this is my punchline is like, if we keep considering resources, access to resources, education, and financial support is the thing that's going to change systemic poverty, right? Or violence or criminality. I mean, keep it real, Jeffrey Dahmer did all of that. You know what I mean? So that doesn't qualify change. What is qualifying change in the demographic that we're serving? Who's saying this is producing something else, right? Or creating something else? Everybody don't want a $300,000 house. That's just not what they're not that concerned. They're more concerned about, am I gonna be able to provide for my kid? Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? Am I gonna do those things? So if that's the case, then the measure has to be different. So I'm long-winded in this because I'm really passionate about this, because grassroots organizations do not have to feel like they're not meeting the mark because they're not collecting data the way that the infrastructure creates the data. I need not grassroots organizations to understand that they have the power to say, this is how we collect data, and this is what I feel like is going to move the needle. So one of our key components in our data set is the person that put you in prison or to put you in ISS or suspended you, are they for you or against you, right? If a criminal, this is what makes criminality. If I get caught with a pack of dope, right? I get caught with an onion, a crack, and the police officer pulls it out of my pocket, and I look him dead in his eye and say, you put that there, I am very high on the criminality scale, right? Because the average mind wants to be corrected, right? Because the average mind wants to learn. That's just the way that the chemical construct is, right? So if I'm willing to tell you that, gaslight you and look you dead in your face and tell you that you're crazy because you pulled dope out of my pocket, my criminality level is extremely high though, right? So when we transition out of criminality and we go into violence, violence says that I believe that I'm so much right that I can now kill you to get my way. You know what I mean?
Justifiably.
Justifiable. So when I can justify my negative intent to a high degree to where now I can justify why it's okay for me to murder you for stepping on my shoe, now we're in a different culture, right? We're in a different thought process. So how do we say that I'm about to return this person, because this is what the justice system says though, right? The justice system is set up for rehabilitation, right? Rehabilitation is returning somebody back to what they originally were, right? If they were, I don't even got it. It's how, you know what I'm saying? I'm already trapped in this criminality thought process though, right? So really what you need to do is you need to take me to something else. That's habilitation. You know what I'm saying? So how do we tell the conglomerate that says, listen, if you don't follow these constructs of our societal norm, and the way that we keep our societal norm normal is removing you, right? But what they don't know is when you remove me from societal norm and put me in a different societal norm, all I'm gonna do is adapt to the next societal norm. So now prison is college. So now I went to college to be worse than what you thought me were, and then you're gonna reintroduce me back into society and think that I'm gonna be anything different than that? That's insane, you know what I mean? That's expecting different results with the same measures though, right?
We have a word for that.
Yeah.
Insanity.
Insanity.
right.
Or let's innovate, right? Let's innovate and accept that violence is the cry of the unjust, you know what I mean? Anytime, you can't fix trauma with more trauma. It's just like, trauma is the lack of love, so we're gonna add more lack of love? Like, the mathematics don't math, you know what I'm saying? So how do I love well? Well, I'm stuck in criminality. Why do you got the pack of dope? Well, I can't feed my family, and as a man, I feel like it's important to feed my family. Well, here, let me go ahead and give you $500 for the month. Go ahead and knock that thing out. What's the next issue? Oh, I want sustainable income. Okay, so to get sustainable income, you need these things. So when I went to prison, what they told me was they took college out of prison because they felt like people that had committed crimes were getting free education, while people that stayed out and didn't commit those crimes had to pay thousands of dollars for that education. You don't understand the construct. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really don't want them to be rehabilitated or habilitated. You really just want them to return back to what they are. And you're saying what you want. You want them to go back to what they originally were. So tell me this.